Focus on order entry. So many choices, so little time. So I want to start by talking about the importance of order entry. And it's obvious when you just give it a glancing thought. Of course, order entry is important, but there are so many things that order entry is responsible for. So many things that they initiate. Everything begins with order entry for the life of a sales order, or the life of production. It all starts here, and there are so many things that depends on what they do. So a typical order starts by gathering information from the part record, the customer, the die, etc., various config settings, and it brings all that back to the order entry personnel, and then they complete the other things that are variable about the order. But every order has to be verified. All of this data that comes in from the part, the customer, the die, and other places, it all has to be verified. There's a lot of trusting EPICS in this process, of course, as you should, but still, this is all information that they have to verify as they go, because any of this data at order entry, almost any of it, can be changed, and sometimes it will need to be. Most of the time, it does not. But it can be, because there are so many exceptions. With order entry, there were just, like I say, exceptions abound. There were so many different possibilities and exceptions for one customer or another that may come into play. And there's no other planning step in the life of an order that has so many options. Every planning step is important, but the order entry has so many things that they're dealing with. And it requires an intelligent decision maker at the keyboard. So here's some of the things that I've just listed some questions here, some things that order entry people have to deal with for just about every order. These are just some of the routine order entry decisions. The pricing, very important. Is it correct? Is the quantity, the order to quantity, correct? Are there any discounts or surcharges or any other adders? Who's it shipping to? I mean, it may be shipping to one location one time and another location the next time. So is the shipping customer correct? Is this ship date? Now Lorena had a really great suggestion in the Q&A, or not the Q&A, the discussion panel about limiting the ship date by customer. If a customer can only receive shipments on Wednesday and Thursday. So EPICS right now has no way of limiting that for you. So here's another case where the order entry people have to know. Perhaps they're getting an on-screen pop-up note, but they have to know that this customer can only receive shipments on Wednesday and Thursday, or Wednesday and Friday. Is the order complete? Because you're entering perhaps many items. And you could save all the information, but at some point you have to know, is that order complete? When is it complete? As we come back to the sales order and we enter another item, are there any items that we've duplicated in this process? If the customer uses a new die, how does that affect pricing? Because are we billing for die setup charges? Are there other first time use charges that we have to apply here? If there's stock inventory, how do we use that stock inventory? How do we apply it? And the same with reserves, because if you're using reserves, you have to know right up front and which reserve to use and how to apply that. So like I say, these are just some of the things that order entry deals with every single sales order. And I go to a lot of extrusion plants, or I used to. And the order entry people, sometimes they'll say, oh, they're a little bit uptight, they're a little bit particular about this or that, and they have reason to be, because there's just a lot of information here that they're having to deal with, and if they get any of it wrong, then they hear about it. Okay, so EPICS has tools, of course, to assist with order entry and all these decisions that they're dealing with. So we will be taking a look at what I'm calling guides, these processes that allow you to, or that guide you through identifying reserve orders or reserves and applying reserves. And the same thing for stock inventory. It's first to identify that stock is available and how much stock is available, because if you are applying stock, it very well may change the routing, which is another thing that order entry personnel can change. You know, if you're pulling everything from stock, then you don't have to route this through extrusion. So identifying and applying quantity discounts and surcharges. So again, dealing with pricing. And then alerts. And you know, we're familiar with on-screen alerts, but I want to look at some particular ones here for pricing issues and routing issues, missing or incorrect information, and the various types of alerts that you'll see on screen. Then we'll also take a look at these on-screen cues. These are some just little bit of information, little text that you see in the center of the order entry screen that points you along to, you know, using Control P to assign the ship date or Control O to assign a one-time ship to customer. And also there are many configuration settings that apply to order entry. There's 40 of them, 40 configuration settings. And each of these can be used to modify the behavior of the screen, you know, and such as to choose which types of guides that you want to use, or choose which types of alerts that you want to see or don't want to be bothered with. So we'll be looking at not all 40, but we'll be looking at some of those configuration settings. Okay, so we'll start with these guides that I was referring to. Okay, reserves. So many of you are dealing with reserves, where you are, you know, you're reserving capacity, reserving time, whether at extrusion department or any other department, and order entry must be able to identify these reserves and pull from the correct reserve. So on the screen, then you will see EPICS keeps track of, as you're entering these items, which items can be pulled from a reserve or applied to a reserve. And you'll see that in two ways on the order entry screen. You'll see that with the message triangle, and also on the highlighting the production date. And it looks like this on the order entry screen in these two places, these two fields. And of course, when you have a message triangle or when you see a colored field, then you always have the option, the ability to hover over that field and get a tooltip text to see, why is it colored? What does that mean? And so we can see there that there are two reserves. The reserve numbers are 10 and 11, two reserves that could be used for this item. Okay, so once we're now aware that reserves can be used, that they are available. When we come to the posting screen, you can see at the top of the screen, there is a checkbox to scan for reserves after posting. So this is something that you can, of course, just check, uncheck whenever you like. If you would prefer, if you would like for that thing to be checked automatically, for it to be always, you know, checked on when you come to the screen, then there is a config setting here called G check for reserves. Okay, and if you enable that setting, then that checkbox will always be checked. Okay, but either way, as long as that box is checked, when you post the order, then it will scan for reserves. If I can get my keyboard to go. Okay. And it brings you to the reserve screen where you can see the reserves that are available. So you can see there that there's numbers 10 and 11, and you can make your decision based upon what you see here and apply the reserve to the sales order. Okay, there's a similar process or notifications, you might say, for stock inventory. So this is another view of the order entry screen when there is available stock. In this case, you can see that the routing is highlighted, this peachy kind of color. I'm going to call it peach. So order entry is alerted that stock is available. And so once again, we can mouse over this colored field and we can see what this means. stock inventory currently has enough pieces to complete this item. Okay, that's good to know. So if you do plan to pull this entirely from stock, then you would want to change the routing so that we don't go through our planning steps and our extrusion steps. We'll just go pull that from stock and ship it out the door. That's one possibility. There are other possibilities, of course. So here's the first one you see again, where there is sufficient stock to complete the order. But another message might look like the one at the bottom. So there are pieces in stock inventory that can be used, but they will require further processing. So this is a message that, it takes a little bit of reading here, but it tells you that there are 110 pieces in this quantity in inventory for this die length and finish. Okay, then there's another one that has this die and finish, but a longer length. So it's telling you that the first one is the correct die, correct length, correct finish. So we're good there. The other one could be used, but we'll have to cut that back. So once again, at order entry, you could determine, okay, if I choose to pull these longer pieces out of stock, I'll need to add the cutback department or choose a cutback routing. Okay, so posting, same thing here. We see the checkbox for fill from stock. And once again, there is a config setting. G, check for stock. If this is checked, if this is enabled, then this checkbox will be automatically checked. Of course, once again, you can always uncheck it, check it whenever you like. And that takes us to the fill from stock screen, where we could see available stock tickets and choose the ones that we need to apply. Okay. So order entry, once again, can choose, make their selection from this available stock and go on about their business. Okay, so this is one of the places where fill from stock is where EPICS scans or warns you, notifies you that stock is available. So if your order entry people are not dealing with this step, then they can also be picked up at the planning step. And of course, you can come directly to the fill from stock screen at any point to find stock that's available. Okay, but this is all an automatic process, one of these guides from order entry. Okay, so let's talk about the pricing just a little bit, quantity discounts and surcharges. So we're talking about quantity here. So this is something that has to be applied at the end of the order entry process, because quantity discounts may be based on a single sales order item. That may be based on all of the sales order items. So we have to know what quantity we're dealing with. So you come to the end of the process. When is the sales order complete? And apply these quantity discounts. So we come to the end of this, and then we click this button at the bottom of the order entry screen. So once again, this is a place where, when order entry needs to know, is the order complete? Now, you can always reprice. You can always come back and redo this if you need to add another item, no problem. But this is something that needs to be done at the end of the process. So there is, if you are not seeing, let me back up real quick. If you're an order entry person and you are not seeing this button here highlighted, this shade of blue, it's just a little bit darker shade to bring attention to itself. If you're not seeing that highlighted, and if you're not being warned about discounts being available, then you may want to enable this setting called G, check for discounts. Okay, so this is a good one to know about because it is off by default. So it may be that you're not seeing these warnings or these notifications. Okay, so just a quick look at the pricing for the sales order item, and then the same pricing once the discounts are applied, so that they all come in as this other green color and based once again upon quantity. Okay, highlighted field alerts. Okay, there are 3 different colors. We've already seen the peachy color. So we have this peach, yellow, and red, which are simply information, a warning, or a stop. And we've already seen this one here, this peach color, which is something to draw attention to itself. It's not going to, be a terrible thing if you miss this one, but it certainly is useful information to you. Yellow fields, however, this is a warning. Here's a warning where it says there are no active copies for this die. So we've started the sales order. We've chosen a die. All the copies are inactive. They're all in correction, or they're all nitrided or something. There's at the moment there is no active copy for this die. Are you sure you want to continue with this? So you may want to do some investigating at that point to see, when is that copy going to be available? And then we have these red highlighted fields, and these are stoppers. In this case, here's an example where it says the die is not available. So not only are there no active copies, but rather there's no the die itself is not available. And it gives you some possibilities here in this message. Maybe it has no standard data. Maybe it's marked inactive. But once again, the die record itself exists because we have the number, but it's not available for this customer. Okay, and of course you always have the message triangle, the warning triangle. You can just mouse over that, and if you have several warnings, messages, information, they will all show in this one large text block. Okay, now we've already seen how you can mouse over any individual field, but then once again, you can just mouse over the triangle and you can get all of them in one shot. Okay, let's talk about on-screen cues. One-time ship to. Now, this is something else that many people are just unaware of when it comes to order entry and shipping. That you can drop ship, or maybe you're shipping to a construction site or something like that. You can drop ship to an address that you use only one time. I'll show you how to do that. So on the order entry screen, when you click in the ship to field, and if you mouse over it, you will see this message. It says press here to and click Control O for one to create the one-time ship to customer. And then you also see this on-screen cue down here at the bottom in the middle, Control O for one-time ship to. Okay, so if you do that very thing, then it opens up this little screen here that allows you to input the address information. So you type in the customer name and the ship to address. Notice that there is a customer number here that starts with the letter X. So it actually does create a customer record, and you can go back and find these customer records at any point on the customer screen, so that you will always have a record of where those jobs shipped. Okay, so this metal is shipping to this job site, so we need to have a permanent record of where that actually went. So you will always find that. But notice that what is following the X is the sales order and item numbers. So you always have this cross-reference in this way. It starts with an X colon, but then it is the sales order and item numbers that are the customer number record. Also notice that it's marked inactive over here on the far right. It is automatically made an inactive record. It certainly will not prevent you from shipping it, but it's not a record that you intend to use again because it's a one-time ship to. Right, so back on the order entry screen, once again, once I have created the one-time ship to, then it drops that number into the ship to field so you can see the ship to number. Okay, let's talk about ship date. Okay, and some definitions dealing with ship date. So ship date is the planned ship date. It's the date that you plan to ship the metal to the customer. And then the prod date, the other date, the prominent date that you see on the order entry screen. This is the planned extrusion date. This is not an extrusion schedule date, of course, because order entry is not scheduling the press. Okay, but this is the planned completion date, the deadline date for extrusion. So those are the two date fields that you'll see primarily on the order entry screen. You're dealing with ship date, when we're shipping to the customer, and prod date, when we need to be finished with extrusion. So in assigning these dates, you have some options. Now, of course, you can just click the calendar control, right, and just choose a date or just type one in. Obviously, you can do that. But just in talking about some options that EPICS has for helping you with this, let's talk about Control E and Control F. So Control E, if you're in the prod date field, you can hit Control E, and it will look at the lead times that you have assigned to each of your departments, including extrusion, and works forward to assign or establish or calculate the ship date. Okay, so it starts from the day that the order is entered. It goes forward to assign the lead, based on the lead times, to assign the prod date for the press. And then it goes forward from there, using all of the lead times from each of your departments and looking at the production calendar to skip over days that you're closed or days that departments are closed. And it finally arrives at a ship date. Okay, so if everything is good, if your lead times your standard lead times are giving you what you need, then this may give you a good ship date. It'll certainly give you a ship date based upon your lead times. And then Control F will do the same thing, but it goes to whatever week that the ship date falls into, and then uses the Friday. So it progresses forward and finds the ship date, and if that ship date was Thursday, it's going to use the Friday of that week. Okay, so yeah, so two ways of using your department lead times to calculate forward to get the ship date and the prod date. Okay, now with capacity planning, for those of you that are using capacity planning, you can use Control P to automatically calculate the best ship date. Okay, now this is one of the best and most important features of capacity planning module, because it's something that's designed to give order entry a true ship date based upon the capacity of your departments, of your machines, and based upon the demands of your current backlog. It assigns a true ship date, when you really can ship that to your customer. Again, based upon your capacity, based upon your backlog, and it gives order entry not just a estimate. Well, it's a very close estimate, let's put it that way, but it's the best estimate based upon your capacity. All right, then. Let's talk about some config settings, and we've already seen a few. We'll just talk about a few more here. First of all, and Mariah showed you this yesterday, but I want to point this out one more time, how to identify the config settings for the order entry screen, because like I say, there are 40 of them. So I want to show you how can you see those 40. So you go to the, first of all, open up the order entry screen. Then from the help ribbon, choose identify config setting. And when you do, oh, there it is right there. Identify config setting on the help ribbon. Notice that the order entry screen is also open there. So it's going to identify the config settings for the window that I'm looking at, the active window. So it brings up the configuration screen. You can see up here at the top of the screen is showing FRM SO entry. Okay, so these are config settings for SO entry. And then these are all the settings here in the middle. And something else I want you to know about this is the two or three different scope settings you have for assigning these config settings, because it may be in some of the settings that we're talking about that you want to give individual users different settings. It may be you have a new order entry person that you don't necessarily want them to have the full opportunities to change everything. And we'll talk about how you can limit the scope of what order entry can do. But I want you to know that you can assign these settings to individual users, or you can assign them across the network to apply to everyone. Okay, so first of all, placing limitations and requirements. So this setting called GSO item weight limit. This limits the total weight allowed for a single sales order item. Okay, its default value is 0. But if you think you will never have an item greater than, let's say 100,000 pounds, you might want to go ahead and put that in there, just to once again to assist order entry and not making that mistake. That adding, once you get up to a lot of zeros, it's hard, sometimes hard to decipher, determine between 100,000 and 1 million. But so you can set that limit. But once again, you can do this by user if you like. And there's also a password override option. So maybe a more realistic limit. You have something that's you don't want your new order entry person to enter a sales order item with more than, let's say, 10,000 pounds. And if they have anything over that, then you want the supervisor to come over and approve that. So you can set the password for that purpose. And this is what that message would look like. So we've exceeded 10,000 pounds. And if we have the password enabled, then we can type that in to continue, or just cancel and say, nope, we're not going to do that. So your choice. Okay. So once again, talking about limitations and requirements, this is one to require the part number. So require that the part number is entered, and its default is no. So by default, EPICS does not require you to enter a part number, but I know that many of you always use part numbers. So this is something that you may want to enable. So if this is enabled, then you might see this message that you must specify a part for each sales order item. Okay. Now here's one for order data must match the part. So do not allow data coming from the part to be changed. I think I have an example. No, sorry, I don't. Okay, just back up real quick to this. So, and it's simply that. Once the part is entered, you select the part, and it brings in the die and the length and the routing and the finish and all that stuff. If this setting is enabled, it will not allow order entry to change any of that part data. Okay, so there you go. It may be in that case you're saying, well, what I want you to do is go back to the part, make the necessary changes on the part record itself, and then do it again. So anyway, you have that option of limiting what can be done at order entry. Okay, office code required. You see the office code at the top of the screen, and you can require that or not. If you have more than one location, more than one office entering sales orders, if you have salesmen perhaps in the field entering sales orders, anyway, you can require the office code so you can see where it came from. Okay, require same ship to. So do not allow more than one ship to customer on a sales order. And your options here are yes, no, or warning. So we're talking about here a multi-item sales order. And it may be that you want to make sure all the items on the sales order are shipping to the same place, shipping to the same ship to customer. So once again, this is one where the default value is no. So by default, EPICS will allow you to have a single sales order with two items. One item goes north, one item goes south. Two different ship to locations. Okay, so you can, at the very least, you might want to see a warning. Okay, helpful prompts and warnings. And the first one is compare finish to pricing. So here's a view of the order entry screen. And we can see that there is a finish code here, 103, which is a paint code. But if you look at the bottom of the screen, there is no pricing for finishing. There is no 103 fin code pricing. There is no fin type pricing. We're planning to finish this metal, but we're not planning to get paid for it, is what this is showing at the moment. So it's yellow. It's a warning. Yes, you can do that, but you need to be aware of what's happening here. Right, so there's the paint finish, but no finishing prices. Right. And the message, none of the price lines that you have entered are paint. You're giving away painting at the moment. Okay, and one similar to this, this says this job is mill finish, but if we look at the bottom of the screen, there is, in this case, a paint price. So we're charging for paint, but paint is not called for in the fin code. So here's another case where there is an inconsistency. It's mill finish, but you are charging for paint. Are you sure this is correct? All right. Now, compare finish to routing. This is a similar type of thing. You see the message here at the bottom. The mill routing does not include the paint department, but, or as required by the finish code 103. I'm sorry. So, yeah. Right. So this is the case where we have a finish code 103 on our sales order, but we do not have the paint department of the routing. Okay. So, and this is another one, once again, the default here is no. So this one makes perfect sense to go ahead and enable that setting so that at the very least, you're alerted to the potential of having a finish code, but no finishing department. Okay. So cust first die use warning. This is another one where the default value is no, so you will not be warned about this. But if you enable this setting, it will warn you. It will just, an on-screen warning if this is the first time a die has been used by this customer. So do we need to apply a die setup charge? Do we have any other first-time use charges? By default, you will not be warned about that. However, on the standard die first use warning, this one is turned on by default. So this is for your standard shapes, your catalog shapes, your standard dies. If it's the first time a customer has used a standard die, then you will be warned about that. Okay, show no price warning. Warn if there's no pricing for the selected finish code. So there are no prices set up for fin code 103 for this customer. Now this is similar to what we saw earlier, but this is a specific warning here, no price warning. If you have a fin code with no prices. Okay, duplicate part warning. So earlier I was mentioning the things that we deal with order entry and entering maybe a large order, and you do part of it in the morning, come back and do part of it later on in the day, and there's a likelihood of duplicating parts if you're not keeping really close track. This is something to assist you with that. It's going to tell you if there are duplicate parts. And you can see the example here. You can see have this part called round tube, and the message pops up, and it's going to prevent me from. No, I'm sorry. It's simply a warning. It's going to warn me, right? Simply warn me that I have more than one part, same part on this sales order. Okay, SO entry autosave. This one is on by default, and this is something definitely that you want to make sure is enabled. As you're entering one item and going to the next, EPICS will automatically save each sales order item as it's being entered. So if something tragic happens, computer gets unplugged, one of those things that happens in the middle of the process, what you have done up to that point will have been saved. So make sure that setting is turned on. Okay, then we have a few settings for default values. And here's one for default alloy type. And I've included this because it's a question that we get from time to time. How do you set a default alloy? And there is a config setting for that very thing. Because the alloy type, can come from the part. But if it's not entered on the part, then there is no alloy type that comes under order entry. So this is where you can set the default alloy type for anything where that is empty. Okay. Let's see, standard I custom. So by default, the standard standard customer number, the normal standard customer number is that STD standard customer that you see on the customer screen. However, you can set that to another customer record. If you prefer to have a different customer record that you had used to identify a standard customer number, you can do that, and then use this config setting to identify what that customer number is. And you have the same thing for parts, standard part custom.